Good morning and welcome to the January 30th meeting of the Michigan State Transportation Commission. We have a lot of visitors here today. We have cameras. Director, is there something going on I should know about?
I thought this was the regular meeting.
Okay. Since we have so many visitors, let me explain what this body does. Under the Constitution, we set public policy for the department. We audit the department as well as other agencies that receive funds, road funding. We have the ability to authorize the issuance of bonds by the department. And those are the three things on the Michigan Constitution that this body deliberates on. In addition, we also, through an agreement with the department, review and approve almost all contracts. Today is business as usual, so we're going to start with a welcome to our newest commissioner, Steve Adamini. Steve, do you want to say a word or two about who you are and what you're looking to accomplish?
Yeah, I served on the Transportation Commission 86, 87, 88, and 89, so that was 30 years ago, so I'm probably a little rusty. But I know generally the things we deal with here, and I had the good fortune of sitting in close proximity to the governor, the now governor, when I served in the legislature from 2001 through 2006. Became very good friends with her. After she was elected, she asked, "Is there anything you'd like to do in government?" And I said, "Well, you want to fix the damn roads, don't you? So do I." And she says, "Okay, when I have an opening, we'll put you on Transportation Commission again," and I'm pleased to be here.
Well, welcome back. We appreciate you being here and joining us. On to commission business. We have the minutes of October 17th, 2019. Before I ask for motions, does anybody have any comments or changes? I'll accept a motion.
Move approval, Mr. Chair.
Support.
All right, we have both. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed or abstaining? Motion passes. All right, we have the 2009 and 2011 resolution to refund those 2009, 2011 state trunk line bonds. Patrick McCarthy, the Bureau Director of Finance Administration, is here to present the resolution.
Thank you, Chairman. Before you is a resolution requiring a motion of the Commission to allow MDOT to refund the 2009 and 2011 STF bonds, assuming that market conditions still warrant such a transaction. Currently, the 2009 bonds are callable, and with interest rate conditions as they are, we will realize present value savings of $7.6 million by refunding the entire outstanding bonds of $110.4 million. This is a present value savings of 6.86% on the existing debt service. Also in the resolution is the approval to refund the 2011 STF bonds as either an advanced taxable refunding transaction, which would have present value savings of $9.9 million, or we could do a forward refunding, which would yield savings of $12.4 million, or roughly 18.2% present value savings. Are there any questions?
All right, we're gonna do here is see, we're gonna go by each commissioner and see what questions they have, let you ask any questions you want, and move on to the next commissioner. We'll start with Vice Chair Hayes.
Really on this particular part. Sorry, on this particular part, I really I don't have questions. It is to the advantage of the Michigan taxpayer to refund with at an early date to realize those gains. We're able to do that. How?
The interest rate in the market today are significantly lower than when we issued the bonds in 2009 and 2011. So the conditions have continued to improve now is the first opportunity that these bonds are callable, that we can go back to the market and refund them.
It's my only question, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Hartwell.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, this is good news. And this then is the earliest opportunity that we've had to refund. It's the first call opportunity on the bonds?
Correct, 2009 became callable in November.
I see, okay. And the amount, again, was an impressive number. It was,
For the 2009s, it's about 7.6 million, and for the 2011 bonds, it's about 9.9 million.
that's the savings.
Yes. That's the
And what happens to that money?
That will be, it'll be recognized in the future years, and the difference between the debt service we would have paid on the existing bonds and the debt service we will pay on the refund bonds.
So it's fair to say that that's money that otherwise, it's an opportunity for us, and it's money that otherwise would have been spent on bond retirement, on debt service, and that can now go into roads, it can go into staff expenditures.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Zero.
I'm wondering how long will it take to do this process, once this is approved, or if this is approved? Is this like a 6-month process, or?
The refunding transaction should be done in 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
Anything else on?
No more questions? Commissioner Yatuma.
I don't have any further questions on this. You guys gave us a briefing before the meeting on it. Just want to commend the department for their excellent work to save as much money as possible.
Commissioner Adamini.
I don't have any questions. In my prior experience on the board, we had 2 significant opportunities to do the same thing at great savings, and so I'm familiar with the process, and I'm all in favor of it.
Thank you. Any more questions?
One more question, Mr. Chair. It's no secret that there's another resolution to consider, and that's bonding going forward. What is the rationale for taking this action as it pertains to the bonding going forward?
The 2 transactions really aren't related. We've had this one in the works or on our horizon for quite a while, waiting for the refunding opportunity to present itself.
Thank you.
Well, this is obviously routine commission business. I think the last time we did this was my very first meeting on this commission. And with that, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I need a motion.
We need a motion.
Oh, that's right, sorry. Need a motion.
I would move, I would make the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Support.
Now we'll take that vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? It passes, thank you. You referenced the next item, which is rebuilding Michigan new bond resolution. We're also going to take that with the approval of the revised 5-year program, although we will have motions and vote separately on them. And Laura Mester, the department's chief administrative officer, is here to present the resolution for each of those.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everyone. The resolution required. And along with that, we will also have our revised 5-year plan, which you have previously approved. And what we would like to do is to
State Transportation Commission to move up the condition of our network. Benefits of this strategy is, the big one is we're going to be able to get dollars into our network today at a lower cost as it relates to, one of the things that we've tried to look at is what's the cost of construction inflation. Will the public benefit quicker from some of the fixes that we're doing? Again, as we go through the presentation, you'll notice that we're doing more reconstructs than we normally do with our mix of fixes, because with the influx of this type of money, we can address some of the long-standing that we've been working on rehabs, and now we're able to do reconstructs to really put in a longer-term fix so that we don't have to go back and do rehabs and capital preventive maintenance on more often than we normally do. It also will modernize our system. Some of these pavements that we'll be addressing had a useful life of 0, and so with doing the rehabs, we're again just patching them and bringing them so that they were safe and usable. But a long-term solution is really a better benefit for our citizens from both mobility, reliability, and a safety perspective. One of the things that we thought would be important for you to understand as you look at the resolution and the program is our capacity to bond. And this slide is really just a math problem that shows you with constitutionally dedicated revenues, what's our capacity. We have current debt service of about $118 million, and we, by transportation, the commission policy, we are limited to 4 times coverage, which is 25% of the total available revenue to cover debt service. So we could go up to about $300 million in debt service and still stay within the debt service. And the next slide really shows you graphically our capacity to do that. As you can see with the blue is in 2027 is when the majority of our debt service, what we are calling our debt service cliff, is the way that the bonds have been structured over the number of years and the pre-fundings. We were able to identify opportunities here where when we structure the new debt for the $3.5 billion, we will try to smooth out the debt service payments so that it has less impact on our road and bridge program. Because in 2028, we would have forecasted additional revenue into the road and bridge program because it's a trade-off from debt service to now to investments into road and bridge. And so with this strategy, we're really accelerating the use of the dollars, and then we'll smooth out the program to have both a smooth debt service program as well as a capital program for road and bridge. So here's the bread and butter portion. Dang. Thank you. So here is really the structure and the impact to the 5-year construction plan. So as you recall, when we came before you to do our last 5-year plan, we had road and bridge construction of almost $3.9 billion. With the new road plan, including the bonded debt, we'll have a program over the next 5 years of $7.3 billion. As you can see, that almost doubles the size of our program. And so we have been working with our regions to identify what opportunities do we have to add new projects and enhance projects that were already in the plan. One of the things that we did is, as you recall last year when the governor had proposed a 45-cent tax increase, we had been working with the regions to identify what would happen if we had that. So we leveraged some of the work that we had already started in the past to look at, with those resources, what could we do? And we took a number of rehab projects and converted them to reconstruction so that we get, again, the benefit of a longer useful life. And we're doing a fix that really gets to the, to the substructure and the underlaying of the pavement. This also allowed us, by doing fund shifts between our revenue program and the bonded debt program, that we would be able to, again, align some of the bridge work that we need to have completed and add an additional 73 projects to the program with what we call the backfill. But really, it's just a fund shift between what will we do with bonding and what will we do with available traditional constitutionally I can't say constitutional, resources. And so what we really, at some point, what we will try to do is say it's not one's bonded debt and one's revenue, it's what total resources do we have available to us to make these investments. And by doubling the program, it certainly will have a very positive impact on our program, not just for some of the efforts, but also with bringing in and putting that much money into the network. So here's just a little more breakdown. We can provide this in different layers, but as we looked at the bond proceeds, again, we had a number of rehab projects that we may not have changed the scope, but we moved it up in the program. So again, getting that fixed quicker. We also, some were just plain fund shifts because they met the criteria, as they had long useful lives, so that will match our bonded debt structure, and they carry a great amount of traffic. And when we identified all of the projects to be included, we have an average fixed life of 27.17 for these 49 projects. And that will be important to, again, how we structure the debt, and because that will give us some flexibility to have much longer term debt. So again, the impact on our program and our debt service program can be looked at holistically and smoothed out over the life of both the asset and the debt. So here is just, and I'll quickly go through the graphs just to show our announced five-year program. Broken down by year. You can see how it ramps up in 21 and 22, and then it'll go back down. The important thing here is to, with this will put money into the network, but we still need a long-term solution to address some of the ongoing fixes that we have. We recognize this will not fix all of our roads and bridges, but it will fix a great number of them that have that are very important to our economy and the traveling public. And here's just another depiction of when you try to drill down into what's the revenue source, looking at our constitutional revenue, bond financing, and then what it does to the revised 5-year program. More detail as you think about as you looked at the 5-year plan that we put into your hands, a heavy emphasis on reconstruct. And this is something that we don't do because with our mix of fixes and trying to reach the goal, we have to optimize the use of our resources, and we can impact with reconstructs with these dollars some of the long-term problems that we need to address and make those pavements last longer than typical rehabs do. And then if you're, again, linking the presentation to your 5-year plan and the bond resolution, this is the distribution by region. And again, this aligns itself with where the traffic is. And if you have any questions as we move into the final, the preliminary plan is to issue bonds over a 4-year period. And Patrick and his team and I will look at what's the schedule for construction and the letting program, and then we'll match up the bond structure with the outflows in anticipation to make sure that when we need the money, we'll have the money, and we'll get it done. Interest rates are fluctuating with 25-year bonds between 2.5 and 3.5. Those are pretty low. You know, there's a lot of equity in the market, and transportation bonds are looked at very favorable. So we're anticipating that we'll, again, be oversubscribed as we approach the bond market. With our refundings, for the last 9 years that I have been with the department, these are very sought after bond issuances because of the constitutional earmarking that we have available for it. And then if you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer them. But again, as you think about the bond resolution and the 5-year plan, the connection and our use of the resources that will become available to us.
Thank you, Laura. Director, I want to thank you for making your people and resources available to this commission since the packet came out for us to call and discuss our individual questions that we had as we read the packet. So I want to note and thank you for that. In our packet, which is not in Laura's presentation, I noticed there was a program list. Troy, where will that be posted?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Rebuilding Michigan New Bond Resolution will be posted on the State Transportation Commission website. And at the end of the bond resolution, it will include a list of the projects along with the budget for each of the projects. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Troy. Laura, I noticed when I read the draft bonds for both the refinancing and this project that there is a lockout period before you can refinance, typically, I think, 5 years. Is that for marketing, that when you sell those bonds, people don't want them called so quickly? What's the purpose behind that?
I believe that's part of it, and the way that it's structured, we could work with our bond counsel to see if we want to have, you know, non-taxable versus non-taxable, gives you other flexibility when you can have, to determine whether bonds are going to be callable or not.
Who is our bond counsel?
There's two of them here, actually, for the new money deal, Esther So, might be able to answer any questions you might have.
Just wondered, you know, what firms were our bond counsel?
Dyke Magassett and Dickinson Wright.
All right, thank you. And then Laura, my final question before we move down the row is, with putting this much additional money into the system, what do we feel the inflationary effects will be on the jobs that get bid?
Well, we've made assumptions that if we were to do some of these jobs farther out, 5 to 10 years, that we're avoiding 4% inflation on construction costs. I guess I'll have to defer to Brad, but depending on, again, how much planning goes in and what length of time they have available when we post the jobs and make those available, will determine what kind of bids that we receive.
And we'll obviously be reviewing those bids here and approving them, so
Yes.
we'll know the answer to that question when we see them.
Right.
So we're going to start with Commissioner Hayes again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Laura. I have a few questions. I don't want to hog the time here, but we're going to have is a bit off of your question, Mr. Chairman, about inflationary costs. Mine's more mechanical. If we are having this significant of an increase this rapidly of funds available, does the contracting community have the capacity, and does MDOT have the capacity to be able to engage and actually do the projects that are on the list?
Well, we certainly believe so, because several years ago, when the ARA funding was made available to us, the Department of Transportation and the industry responded to that challenge to get those federal funds into the network and put pavement and do road and bridge work to do that. I believe that they'll respond to, as we lay out our plan and we make the project list available and the timing of the letting, that yes, the construction and the consulting industry will respond to our needs.
I sense in previous meetings that we've had some concern in that area as far as contractor capability, but you're confident.
I am confident, and I'm confident in our department because one of the things that we have been doing is looking at when the governor had presented her plan last year, we've been meeting internally to talk about what an augmented plan would mean and look like for the department, and looking at some of the processes that we have in place and what can we do with the industry and internally to say, what would we do differently if we had this, and really investigate or evaluate what impacts on some of the decisions that we make as it relates to how do we program, how do we do the work, and how do we partner with others to make that happen.
Okay, switch gears here a second. So of the list, the list that's the existing 5-year plan and those projects that were added, those that are to be funded with bond money, as the projects were evaluated, will the completion of those projects will they have a lifetime that matches the lifetime of the bonds?
Yes. Yes, we will structure, by IRS rules, we're required to match our debt issuance with the useful life of the asset. And that's one of the advantages of looking at those projects that have a much longer useful life so that we can smooth out the payments and really take advantage of both opportunities.
Switching gears again, ideally, as the Chief Administrative Officer, would it be, this is not a political question, it's a mechanical question. Ideally, if you were going to issue these bonds, would you prefer to have, as the Administrative Officer, a revenue stream to offset the financing cost of new funds, because you're going to take existing funds to pay now?
I'm always interested in getting more money.
I kind of knew that was going to be your
Yes.
answer, but
Yes. Would it be easier for the department if we had new revenue to go along with the bond issuance? Yes, but it's the tool that we have available to us. And when looking at the cliff that we had, we have the capacity to issue debt and to address needs that we definitely need to address today. And by doing the bonding, we can accelerate some of those projects and do some fixes that we, under current circumstances, we normally wouldn't do, because we're trying to make those dollars go as far as we can and impact as many, of the motoring public that is possible. But I'm always interested in more money, I told my husband this morning, man, I sure wish he'd win the lottery and I'd spend $3.5 billion.
So one last question, and that is, we're front-loading the projects, going to do a lot of projects, should we take this action, a lot of projects in the next 4 to 5 years. We will incur a significant amount of bonded indebtedness. What does that do in 5 years? What will be the options of people sitting at this table and the MDOT staff in doing future projects?
Well, compared to today, if we think about where the cliff is and we do a 5-year rolling program, if we smooth it out, it'll be similar to what we have today. We'll have, if you look just at a point in time, 5 years from now, we'll have less available for bond or for capital projects because we are bonding. But you also have to think about how did we put that dollar to work today and over the next 4 years. And I think you have to look at them together, the total capacity of what we have and how we can get those projects done. There is a cost savings relating to inflation, interest rates are low, and the impact on the public compared to, we will have debt service longer than we anticipated from 2027, but it will smooth out our program. And we'll be back the way that we normally are, looking at what's the mix of fixes that we can do with available resources. But I'm hopeful that before we get to 5 years, that we have new long-term sustainable revenue source.
Very good. Thank you very much. Good answers, Laura. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Look, Laura, you keep mentioning the cliff. For those people who are unfamiliar with what she's talking about, for the past 4 years, this commission has been looking at the 2022, 2021 era, that if we don't do something about our major trunk lines, they will go over a cliff and it's not recoverable. That's the condition of the pavement. So when Laura speaks to the cliff, that's what she's talking about. So for 4 years, we've watched this date get nearer and nearer. This is the first time that we're going to take a step back from the cliff. Commissioner Hartwell.
Well, thank you, Chairman, and Commissioners, if you bear with me for just a couple of minutes of some comment before I get to my question, I'd appreciate it. I have now 24 years of working with MDOT, 20 of that in local office, and 4 serving on this commission. This I know. MDOT knows how to design and build roads. Staff is continually looking at best practices around the country and indeed around the world. They're testing new materials to ensure that we're using the best available at any given time. They're bird dogging contractors, and they're partnering with local government. MDOT knows how to design and get roads built. So why are our roads in the condition that they're in today? Because over my experience now with 4 governors, MDOT has never had enough money to stay ahead of the natural deterioration of Michigan roads. Now, early in my tenure as mayor, I learned a term that has proven to be helpful for me in understanding this proposal before us today, and that is the degradation curve. I know that commissioners, that you understand this and staff do well, but bear with me a moment, because if you graph road conditions over time, you'll see that a brand new road stays a nice new road without any investment in maintenance for about 5 years, maybe 7 if conditions are right. And then sometime between 5 and 10 years, that curve, road condition curve over time, begins to dip down. Roads begin to decline if you don't invest in them. And then after 10 years, that curve accelerates. And what that means is that the decline of the roads, the condition of the roads is rapid after that point, to the point of roads becoming unsafe and literally undrivable. And the earlier you invest, I think as Laura's pointed out well, the earlier you invest, the longer the roads will stay in good condition. That 27-plus year window that you described there is the result of early investment in roads. So during the heart of Michigan's long recession, we went to our citizens in Grand Rapids and we said, trust us and we'll fix your local streets. And the people of Grand Rapids trusted us, and they gave us a 0.5% income tax dedicated to local streets. With the promise of that, and it was a 15-year commitment with a sunset 15 years out. Well, with the promise of that 15-year revenue stream, we were able to go to the bond market, and we went to the bond market immediately because we knew that every month counts when you're trying to get ahead of that degradation curve. And we knew that the rate of degradation of the roads was more rapid than the cost of the rate of the cost of our money in the bond market at that time. So it was a smart, cost-effective investment of our local resources. As a Transportation Commission, we find ourselves in really, I think, exactly that spot. Rapid degradation of our roads, as good roads turn to fair roads and fair roads turn to dirt. And we find ourselves with inadequate resources appropriated by the legislature to address the problem. This is not a new problem. Certainly not a new problem. I've seen it anyway, perpetuated through now 4 governors. But our role, quite apart from whatever our political ideologies are, or whether we carry labels of liberal or conservative, our role is to fix the roads, to maximize every resource that we have available to do that. By authorizing the issuance of bonds, we tap into an important resource. And by putting these funds to work as early as possible, we get ahead of the degradation curve on these 49 road projects. And by ensuring that adequate repayment mechanism exists, as Mike has questioned here this morning, we exercise our fiscal responsibility as a commission. So finally, there were 3 questions that I would ask that I asked of city staff before we went to the bond market to secure roads for local streets. How will the bonds be amortized? Secondly, how will the funds be used? And thirdly, how will this issue impact our bond rating? Does it put our good rating in any kind of jeopardy? I'm sure you had more questions than that, but those are the three that were really key to me to making the decision about whether we bond early to get ahead of that degradation curve. The agreement answers the first question. The trunk line fund will amortize the debt service, as I understand.
To match the useful life of the projects. So
Yeah.
it's likely that they'll be between 25 to 30. And again, we'll look at, what fix are we doing, and then match up the bonding structure to do that. So that we do, so that, Patrick and I need to stay in compliance with the IRS and make sure that, we're not paying arbitrage either.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And the second question was answered in the presentation. That is, how are the funds going to be used? We see 49 projects that are new projects that otherwise would be done at some future date when they are further degraded.
So the bonded debt has 26 new projects and 23 that are modified, but they are enhanced so that we're getting, again, that longer fix.
Right. Getting ahead of the degradation
Yes.
curve within our asset management plan, which is we've said at this commission, is a very important tool that we
Right.
we
We're
use.
trying to meet other goals like performance and making sure that we're, when we take the bonds proceeds and we look at all of our other available resources, what allows us to get the best solution that we can. And so we're faced with performance measures, we have goals, and we're trying to make sure that how do we maximize that? And that was part of the effort as over the last year, to be quite frank.
Okay. And then the third question, which staff answered by telephone with me earlier in the week or last week, is how does this impact our bond rating? Does this put us in any jeopardy of losing the excellent rating that we have on state bonds? I think you've answered that, but I'd like to hear it again, Laura.
I believe that we'll maintain the rating that we have. I think one is because we have constitutionally dedicated revenue that they're less risky than general obligation debt. I think our history with bonding and making our debt service payments, to my knowledge, we've never missed a payment. And so again, and also the fact that debt service comes off of the top. And so, if I only had $12 left to spend, that $12 would go to debt service.
Okay. Well, so with I mean, in my mind, Chairman and colleagues in the commission, with the satisfactory answer to those three questions, I'm prepared to support this request that's come before us, and I want to urge each of us to be supportive. It's a smart, seems to me to be a smart, cost-effective way to address a looming crisis, as you've described it, Mr. Chair, on our roads. And this is important, and I'm going to restate what Laura said. This is not a permanent fix. We still need an increased dedicated source of revenue from the legislature to solve the long-term going forward problem. But this will put us back on track to fix our Michigan roads, and that's our duty as a commission. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for bearing with me with extended comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartwell, and very artfully articulated and good to hear how you handled it in Grand Rapids. You know, if our audience takes nothing else away from this today, it's on how we look at our roads. We look at this body, and many others look at our roads as assets. We use it to move people to work, to move our goods and services like automobiles around, to move agriculture around, to help Pure Michigan move tourists up and down through the state. Some people say, well, you have to put money into these roads. They're a liability. They're not a liability. Every asset that a business has or a state has is something that has to always be maintained. And that's what this body does. We maintain one of the most critical assets that we have. Commissioner Zerip?
We had a lot of conversations, or questions that were answered, and the few comments that I had is that, with PA 51, our debt service ratio can actually be up to 50%, correct?
Yes.
And MDOT stance is to be at 25%, and I think that is to be commended, that we will never, our goal is to never be over the 25%, when in reality we could be at 50%. So I think we need to keep that in mind. Also, I think we need to keep in mind that this is the perfect time to do a bond issue because we can get interest rates so cheap. So I think it's very prudent on our part to do that when we can get money at a good rate. So I actually had a lot of other questions. They were all answered, but those are two things that really I wanted to make a comment on. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Yatuma?
Thank you. First off, just want to thank the department, Paul, Tony, for all of your excellent work on this. You guys have answered all of our questions and got us all the information we've requested. That certainly made our job a lot easier. I want to echo a lot of what Commissioner Hartwell stated. MDOT is currently a leader in many areas. And I think now that we have additional funds available, I think we can focus on continuous improvement even more so, ensuring that we use the highest quality standards throughout the country. I propose this commission work with MDOT to engage national industry experts to assure the public that we are utilizing every dollar as efficiently as possible. One thing that I think we're all focused on is, given Michigan's heavy truck traffic, we are particularly focused on building the smoothest roads in the country. When heavy trucks drive over small bumps in the roads, the trucks bounce, which dramatically increases the wear on the road and significantly reduces the road's life cycle. Accordingly, we need to continue to hold MDOT contractors accountable to provide the highest quality standards. Working through of this is a large endeavor, and the State Transportation Commission and MDOT take this matter very seriously, as we owe a duty to our next generation. Mr. Chairman, in light of these additional funds, I ask that we spend significant time in our next meeting to continue to work through this process of ensuring we're using national best practices for road and bridge improvements to ensure the public that we're providing the best value.
So noted, and you can work with the gentlemen sitting between us to put that on the April agenda.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Obviously, any other commissioners that would want to be part of that process would certainly be appreciated. Add to that, I welcome the public to join the next meeting so they can see how we are acting as proper fiduciary of these funds to ensure it's being used as efficiently as possible. As the governor mentioned last night, safety is our priority. We need to make sure that our roads and bridges remain a safe and reliable standard for our families to use for years to come. It should also be noted, in round numbers, there's a 25% annual future cost savings to rebuild pavement, doing it right on the front end as opposed to rehabilitating that same road. Accordingly, as the governor noted, in the long run, this will be less expensive and better value for each Michigan resident, and I'm honored that she entrusted us with a significant undertaking. Thank you. I have no further comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Adamini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's no secret that our highway system is not in the best condition. And you might say we're even in the emergency room, and we need some triage. I agree that what we are talking about here today is applying resources that are very much needed at this time. But I think sometimes government, when they fix a problem but not totally fix it, we overpromise, or at least the public perceives that this is the final solution. And so if we have a problem 5 years from now, they'll say, well, didn't that bond issue fix everything up? Well, we know it doesn't. And so I'm absolutely in favor of, well, I hope we do here today. But I think we have to be serious about what other long-term fixes we're going to need. And if for no other reason, then electric vehicles are becoming much more popular. And they don't pull up to the gas station and fill up and pay a fuel tax. So I think that with things like that approaching us in the future and needing a more adequate long-term funding for the department, yes, I think the department's done a wonderful job in bringing this forward. But I don't think we can rest on our laurels and say we've solved the problem completely. So I would intend to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final comments or questions from any
Todd,
commissioners?
yeah, I have one. I know the answer to this, but I think every taxpayer in Michigan is wondering how this is gonna impact them if this bond is issued. And, Laura, can you just address where these funds will be coming from? And if there is any talk of any rate increases that would affect the taxpayer?
For this issuance, we will take it from our existing Act 51 distribution that comes to the Department of Transportation. It'll be paid for solely from those revenues that belong to the department. So it won't impact the distribution as it comes through the top and goes through all of the different formulas and is distributed. It'll come from our 39.1% of the MTF revenue when it lands in the state trunk line.
So for the common person, that money comes from licensed vehicle registration?
Gas tax and license registrations.
Thank you. And there's no talk of, as of yet, of any rate increases on that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hayes.
One thing that I think that wasn't real clear is that the whole question of rehabilitation versus reconstruction. I just want to clarify on that because I think a lot of Michigan drivers and taxpayers, they don't like to see the trucks going down the road, taking hot asphalt and filling holes to know that 2 weeks later after the next freeze thaw, it's just going to have to be done again. So that's the difference here is we're going to be able to, instead of patching potholes, we're going to be able to go through and do reconstruction on, that's what this list is reconstructing so that we aren't patching potholes, correct?
Yes, the bonded projects are, I think it's 46 of 49 are true reconstructs. And then there's a few that are overlays or relate to some of the bridge work that they're being enhanced.
And
But
there are,
we, yes,
and there is no new capacity in here.
no, there is not.
I guess with that, Mr. Chairman, I just echo what some of the commissioners have said about long-term funding. I think that still needs to be addressed. I think this is an excellent proposal brought forth by the administration and the department. I echo also that the staff's done a nice job of answering a lot of questions over the last few days once we knew this was coming our way, and I appreciate that. And I think the governor and the administration is taking a very responsible action here, not dissimilar to what many previous governors have done, including governors of the other party. This is not a new initiative or a new novel idea. It's bonding for state trunk lines has been done historically, and I think it's a great way to front load and address the need that is so compelling out there. And hopefully, once we take this action and new funds are available, that there'll be a serious discussion about how do we address the long-term needs of Michigan highways. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, this financing tool is putting a new funding source into the toolbox for the governor. But it doesn't solve, as we've all talked about, the long-term problem of raising and spending more money on the roads, our most valuable asset. So I, as chair, and I'm sure I'm joined by others here, call on the governor and the legislature to get together and come up with a long-term solution. The 10 million people who live in the state deserve it. And with that, we're going to take two separate motions. Who would like to make the motion on the Rebuilding Michigan New Bond Resolution?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
And supported.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? The motion carries. How about the next resolution on the revised five-year plan?
I'd move its approval, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? Wonderful. That passes unanimously as well. Laura, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chairman.
We will now move on to, Troy, have you figured out where on the website this is going?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Due to the State Transportation Commission's affirmative action on both the revision to the five-year plan and the adoption of the new bonding resolution, MDOT staff is feverishly working to post on our site both the bond resolution and the revised five-year plan. The five-year plan will be posted at www.michigan.gov/MDOT five-year program, and the project map for the Rebuilding Michigan bond resolution will be posted at www.michigan.gov/rebuildingmi. So you can be directed to both of those sites to get the project list and the revised five-year plan. Thank you.
All right, Troy, we'll keep you on the seat and talk about the transportation asset management appointments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we did at the October meeting, the Transportation Asset Management Council has approached the commission and asked for, has requested action for appointment of two TAMC members. The first will be John Start from the Michigan Transportation Planning Association, and the second is Jennifer Tubbs from the Michigan Township Association. Both of those individuals are nominated to join that 11-member panel, and I do need a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions or comments from the commission? I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? It passes. Thank you. Jack, update on our audits.
Morning, Commissioners. It's been a fairly busy morning, so I'll keep this short. So at 5,000 feet, OCA has generally been maintaining the status quo in what it does. Our external division is fully staffed and is issuing its engagement reports at a normal rate. And our internal division is wrapping up some longer-term projects. The economy and churn elsewhere in the state government are contributing to a significant staffing shortfall. OCA has been working with MDOT assigned personnel liaison and the Department of Civil Service to post the open positions. However, and regardless of the staffing shortage, last year's OCA auditors and administrative assistants released 1,200 products for our sole client, who's MDOT. And I'm sure that the MDOT operations and administrations folks can relate to the challenges of obtaining and retaining excellent employees. So maybe together we can put forth some positive thoughts for us all as we strive to reinforce our personnel foundation for MDOT and OCA's future. So are there any questions about OCA since I last saw you? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack. Anybody have any questions or comments for Jack? All right, we'll move on to Exhibit A. Patrick, you can stay for Exhibit A1 as well.
Thank you, Chairman. Exhibit A contains 14 contracts comprised of local agency participation contracts, passenger transportation contracts, and rail contracts. Do you have any questions on those?
No questions, I will take a motion.
I'll move approval.
Give a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? Motion passes. Exhibit A1, Patrick.
Thank you. Exhibit A1 contains 56 contracts, all of which will be let on February 7th, 2020. All have an engineer's estimate greater than $500,000 and require commission pre-approval prior to the bid letting. Do you have any questions?
I'll take a motion. Mr. And second is Hartwell. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That motion passes. Patrick, do you want to stay up for exhibits A3 and A4?
Sure. Thank you. Exhibit A3 contains one contract. This contract is being provided to you because it only received one bidder and it is under $500,000. Do you have any questions?
Move approval.
No motion required on these.
Sorry.
Exhibit A4.
Exhibit A4 contains one contract. This contract was let on January 10th, 2020, and did not receive pre-approval by the commission, and was therefore put on A4 agenda for post-letting approval. Do you have any questions?
I'll take that motion now.
So moved.
Second? Aye. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed or abstaining? Motion passes. Patrick, thank you for all your work on all of this, and appreciate all that you do.
Thank you.
Brad, the letting exceptions, Exhibit A2.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. I have 6 projects to bring to you today, 5 trunk line, 1 local agency project that need to come back for your approval for the justifications. I would be happy to answer any questions.
No questions, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So, I may have gotten out of order here. The project of the reconstruction widening of I-75 from Hess to I-675, the large difference between the low bid and the engineer's estimate was almost 30%, and it's a huge project. Could somebody address that? It's a $15 million delta. Could you explain that a little bit to us?
I would be happy to do so. As the individual for MDOT that has to put their name on these justifications, you might want to know I ask a lot of questions myself when I see things like this. This one was a interesting study. So you understand, this segment of I-75 is the last segment to be rebuilt in that corridor all the way from Flint to Bay City. There's a reason why it was the last segment. It's extremely complex. With complexity comes risks. Within this area, we have a railroad bridge that's being reconstructed. A lot of coordination put on the contractor with the rail company. We're reconfiguring and reconstructing the entire interchange at M46. And north of that, we're actually filling a kind of a sag in the road where there was a railroad over top at one time, requiring about 20 feet of fill to get rid of a dip and a pump house that we no longer need anymore. So all of this put together requires the contractor to be very creative and very intense with their maintaining traffic. I personally don't drive I-75 north and south on the weekends. I drive 127, but I know that it's a huge commuter route, especially for our tourism in the summertime. So there are a lot of restrictions placed on the contractor to ensure that we can keep that traffic moving while they're doing all of this work. One of the real specific risks that the contractor will have on this is the settlement tolerance. We're filling in this dip because it's no longer needed, the railroad's gone. On a 20-foot fill, they can only have about an inch of settlement required. And they're gonna have to do this part width. They can't just fill the hole in all at once. They're gonna have to fill in half and half. There's gonna be a lot of work and a lot of effort's gonna have to go in that to meet that requirement as well. So at the end of the day, complexity drives risk, risk drives cost. We did a lot of analysis on this project, and that's where we believe that the difference is between what our engineer's estimate is. And our engineer's estimate is largely based on average unit costs over time. We do obviously make some adjustments in there that we can for risk, but in this one, there was just a lot more complexity.
Thank you. I do drive that a lot, and I always wondered what that big dip, why that was there, and I understand that.
It used to be a bridge over it.
And the 46 interchange is a complex one, no doubt. So thank you very much for that explanation.
You're welcome.
Good catch, thanks.
Take a motion.
Move approval?
Second. Wonderful. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed or abstaining? It passes. Jason, we have no more motions today.
Good morning, Commission. I'm just going to go over our Exhibit B specifics for projects that were finalized in October, November, and December of 2019. 98 projects, MDOT projects totaling approximately 158 million were finalized. 7 projects were more than 10% over and will be presented to the Commission. 43 projects came in under the original contract amount. The final monthly contract costs were respectively 1.1 over, 5.4 over, and 3.5 under % compared to their original contract value for those months. Fiscal year to date is averaging 1.15% over original contract amount for MDOT jobs. Local agency projects for those same months, 87 projects totaling approximately 72 million were finalized. 5 projects were more than 10% over the original contract amount, and 49 projects came in under their original contract value. If I have my numbers correct, I think there are 6 MDOT projects and 9 local agency projects in the exhibit this month.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick, you want to come back up first for the director's agenda?
Thank you again. We have 2 informational reports for you at this meeting. The first is the January 9th, 2020 Director's Agenda, which has 2 items on it. One is for a renewal or time extension of the Michigan logo sign contract, and the other is a $0 memorandum of understanding between MDOT and the Michigan Department of Treasury for a budget review to support the Transportation Asset Management Council activities. The other report is the January 14th, 2020 State Administrative Board Agenda containing 58 contracts, the majority of which are construction bid letting items. The remainder of the items are consultant engineering services contracts, economic development contracts, transportation planning contracts. Do you have any questions on either of these reports?
Thank you.
I believe I am done for the day. Thank you.
Well, we have no presentations today. Before we get to public comments, Director, do you see what I see in the audience? I see Greg Johnson and Dave Rosinski. Are they coming back? Did we draft them?
We're working on it, Mr. Chair.
All right, now's public comment time. Please, anybody have any public comments? Please, just state your name and where you're from.
I will be very nice. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'm Mike Nystrom. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association. And I wanted to step up and congratulate you and thank you for doing the citizens' work today. You did today what we've been hoping the legislature would do for years now. And we hope that they will recognize the work that you've done here, the recommendation that the governor has done, and end up following through and doing the business that they were elected to do. You are correct that the director and his team have done some great work to develop this program, and it's going to take a lot of work to move these projects forward. But ultimately, I wanted to address a few questions and comments that came up from commissioners. First of all, Commissioner Hayes, you talked about industry capacity. And I wanted to give you a little history. We had a opportunity in 2008 and 2009 to have the President Obama stimulus plan. We received approximately $1.1 to $1.2 billion in a period of about 18 months here in Michigan. The industry stepped forward when that additional funding came to us, not only completing those projects in a timely and efficient manner, but what the department saw was added bidders on most projects. Literally, the average number of bidders on projects went up during that period of time. So the increased investment attracted more folks in the industry to look at MDOT-type projects. Then, with that added bidding capacity, the department actually saw their average bids compared to engineers' estimate come down. The industry is pretty competitive. The competitive bid process has offered the taxpayers of America across all 50 states significant trillions of dollars worth of savings over the years. But during that period of time, MDOT saw that that big pool of bidders actually was so competitive that the average bid price compared to the engineer's estimate dropped. So the industry is competitive. They see this as an opportunity, and as the governor said last night, we look forward to digging dirt. And we will step up and perform these projects in an efficient manner, working with the department. Commissioner Hartwell, you've been around a long time and you know infrastructure, and we appreciate all the work you've done over the decades. You mentioned these are going to be rebuilding Michigan's roads. I want to remind everybody today that these are rebuilding Michigan's trunk line roads. There is not one penny of this $3.5 billion that's going into our local roads. And so I guess that puts more of an impetus back on the legislature to do what needs to be done. We need to find a long-term solution for two reasons. Because the local roads that we all go home on, we go to church to, we go to school on, we go to work on, they are not being touched with this $3.5 billion. And we need to get that out there to the taxpayers, because it was mentioned as well that the taxpayers will hear $3.5 billion and they will think every road is going to be fixed. We cannot let them believe that. We need to let them know that we're going to fix some of our major thoroughfares, but not all roads are going to see investment in this plan. So that, and the fact that at the end of this, the debt repayment will require us to long-term start impacting the MDOT Road and Bridge program. We will start to see a shrinkage in that as well, are the reasons why we need to have a long-term investment. Those two reasons need to be pounded into those elected officials' heads downtown over and over again, and we stand ready to do that as well. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, but I just want to jump up here and fill in a few blanks.
Well said. I think Commissioner Hayes has something to add.
It's interesting, after we kind of finished our work earlier, I leaned over to the chairman and I said, you know, one of us or all of us should have really made the point that we still have a long way to go as far as local and municipal roads and so on, and that's not addressed in this. And so I'm glad you brought it up because I said that was something we didn't stress enough in our discussion. I think we took absolutely the right action this morning, but there's still action we cannot take and that others in this city need to take. On your point about stepping up, and glad to hear what you said about that. Kind of one thing behind one of my statements earlier was just not so much the companies having the will and the capability and so on, but can you find the workforce? Because so many industries, whether it's small business or major manufacturing, is having trouble finding. They're having trouble finding talent. And you talk about moving dirt. Well, you know, a lot of people can shovel, but you're a high-tech industry. Are you able to find the talent? Are we seeing any talent return to Michigan that left back in 2008?
We are. You know, I reckon back to a great movie in the past, Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. And if we have the investment, folks are coming back to Michigan. If the opportunities are there, they're coming back for those full-time, very well-paid middle-class jobs. They really are. Our industry is dirty. Our industry can be hazardous at times. But folks recognize the opportunities that are there. And yeah, our companies are struggling with some of the technical points as you recognize, but quite frankly, the companies are finding ways to bring in new employees, and we're being very aggressive about it. We're looking at all opportunities, ex-convicts, other states, as you mentioned, bringing folks back home. We are back into the schools. You know, we did a major change for years where everybody had to have a 4-year degree coming out of high school. That whole concept has shifted again back to it's A-okay to go to trade school. It's A-okay to come out of high school and go right to work. And so we're working very hard as an industry to make sure that shifts, and it's working.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other
Thank you and
comments for Mike?
congratulations.
Mike, always good to see you. You're always welcome here. Any other public comments? Oh. Another person who's always welcome here.
Oh, I'm glad I didn't have to follow them up.
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, Director. My name is Greg Johnson. I spent just about 27 years with Michigan DOT, another 6 years working for a local agency here in the state of Michigan. And the last 5 years since I retired from Michigan DOT, I've been in Maryland and all around the country seeing what different states are doing and the investments they are making in transportation. So first off, I would like to congratulate the commission on taking this step, congratulate the governor on having a bold vision. What other states are doing as far as investing in their infrastructure is tremendous. I am seeing California, Texas, Florida, Ohio putting more money into their roadways. So this is a positive step. I agree, this is not the final step. One other issue I want to address is that, you know, there's always the talk in the media, well, MDOT doesn't know how to build roads. So having ran Maryland State Highway Administration for a year and a half and saw what they did, Michigan is so far ahead of other states in utilizing technology and making smart decisions. The only reason our system is behind is the money that is not being spent. Maryland, at the time I was there, had a system approximately half the size of Michigan, but they were spending twice as much money on their system, and it showed. Maryland has a project that's going to be rebuilding the beltway around DC in the state of Maryland. That's going to be a $6.5 billion project. Those are the types of funds that other states are expending. What we're doing here, I think, is a great first step to stem the bleeding. But eventually there's going to be a reckoning of, we're going to have to do some, bite the bullet and do some tough things in this state to make ourselves more competitive, to attract businesses, retain businesses. Those other states are doing this purely to keep their system in great shape, to create more options for drivers or for folks who are moving from one spot to another. We're going to have to wrap our heads around that. Coming back to Michigan, I love this state, born and raised here, but it has been shocking to see the disinvestment over the last 30 years and see what other states are doing. So I commend this body and the governor for taking this bold step. It's something that is definitely necessary. And I had to come up to say hi to my old friend Todd. So anyway, thank you.
Always good to see you. Want a job? You can have mine. Any other public comment? Two things before we adjourn. The next meeting of the State Transportation Commission will be Thursday, April 23rd, here in Lansing. And then we have a meeting, it's supposed to be at 10:30 down here with Arrow, but I'm going to ask everyone to be back at 10:15 and see if we can get it started a little early on things that don't require any motions. Did you have a comment?
About a future meeting, I think we're still working, aren't we, Troy, on meeting, the summer meeting being in Detroit, and having the Gordie Howe International Bridge, which the governor mentioned prominently in her comments last night, which we very much appreciate. Are we still planning on having a meeting?
That's correct, Commissioner Hayes. Yep, we are diligently working towards having that meeting, the July meeting in Detroit, and having the Gordie Howe International Bridge to be part of that meeting.
We're making huge progress down there, and I think it'd be timely for the commission to have a chance to witness some of what's going on. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Head over to Canada like we did last time?
I think we can work that out if everyone has a passport
Or enhanced driver's license?
or enhanced driver's license.
Well, I am so incredibly proud to serve today with these fine men and women here today. And with that, we are adjourned. You answer.